My name is Margaret Knight. I'm 34 years old, and until recently, I thought stability meant safety. I lived in Columbus, Ohio, worked finance operations for a regional hospital network, paid my bills on time, avoided drama, and believed adulthood was mostly about building routines sturdy enough to survive difficult seasons. I was wrong about that. Because sometimes destruction doesn't arrive screaming. Sometimes it walks into your apartment smiling softly, asking if you remembered to eat lunch, then quietly studies your weaknesses until one day it decides to use them. My boyfriend's name was Lucas Bennett. In public, Lucas was magnetic, warm smile, easy laugh, the kind of man restaurant servers remembered because he made everyone feel included. Women trusted him instantly. Men wanted to be friends with him. At parties, Lucas moved through conversations like he belonged everywhere. In private, he was different. Not explosive, not obviously cruel. Lucas preferred pressure over confrontation. Tiny emotional adjustments, tiny punishments, tiny guilt trips wrapped in affection. If I didn't text back quickly enough, he'd ask if I was pulling away emotionally. If I wanted a night alone after work, he'd sigh quietly and say, "I just miss when you actually wanted to spend time with me." If I refused to share passwords, he'd laugh and call me secretive. Nothing dramatic enough to justify ending a relationship. At least that's what I kept telling myself. We'd been together a little over 2 years. Lucas moved into my apartment 8 months earlier after his lease ended. The apartment stayed under my name. I paid the rent, utilities, internet, insurance, all the boring adult responsibilities nobody posts online because stability isn't aesthetic. Lucas covered groceries sometimes, ordered decorative things for the apartment constantly. Candles, throw pillows, expensive olive oil he swore changed lives. I didn't keep score because I thought we were building a future. Looking back now, I think I confused emotional exhaustion with compromise. The night everything finally cracked open started with an old iPad. Months earlier, I'd loaned Lucas my spare tablet after his broke. I remembered signing out of banking apps and work systems, but I forgot the obvious things. Messages, email threads, old conversations with friends, random workplace complaints, memes, fragments of ordinary life. I forgot because I trusted him. Lucas didn't forget. That evening, I came home late from a budgeting meeting that felt like it lasted 100 years. My head hurt, my shoulders ached. All I wanted was a shower and silence. Instead, I walked into the kitchen and saw Lucas sitting at the counter with the iPad glowing in front of him. The charger was plugged in. The screen brightness cut through the dim apartment like an interrogation lamp. He didn't say hello. He looked at me calmly and asked, "So this is how you talk about your boss?" My stomach tightened instantly. What? Lucas rotated the screen toward me. Text messages. Private conversations. One thread was me joking with a coworker about how our office copier broke so often it deserved its own funeral. Another was me venting about budget meetings. Another was me sarcastically calling one executive Captain Spreadsheet. Nothing illegal. Nothing cruel. But that wasn't the point. "You went through my messages?" I asked quietly. Lucas shrugged like we were discussing the weather. "You wrote them." I remember staring at him and realizing something cold. He genuinely believed my privacy mattered less than his curiosity. I set my purse down carefully because suddenly every movement felt important. "Why were you reading private conversations?" Lucas leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms slowly. "Because now I know who you really are." That smugness hit harder than yelling would have. Not anger. Satisfaction. Like he'd been waiting to catch me being human. I looked at the iPad, then at him, and something inside me finally stopped trying to defend him. "I want you to move out," I said. His expression flickered. Then he laughed. "Oh my God, Margaret, seriously?" "I'm serious. All this over some texts?" "No," I said softly. "Over you invading my privacy and acting proud of it." His jaw tightened. For a second, I saw the real emotion underneath the performance. Not hurt. Fear. Because control was slipping. Lucas stood abruptly and grabbed the iPad. "You're being dramatic. And you're leaving." He walked into the bedroom, muttering under his breath, while opening drawers loudly enough for me to hear. Closet doors slammed. Hangers scraped violently against metal rods. The performance was intentional. He wanted me to chase him. He wanted me to soften first. I didn't. At 9:18 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Lucas, if you kick me out, I'll ruin you." I stared at the screen without responding. Then, another message arrived. "Lucas, I have screenshots. Your boss, HR, your family, everyone will see who you are." My pulse started hammering harder. And then came the message that changed everything. "Lucas, send me $6,000 or I'll email your boss everything." I read it twice.
A number. A demand. A threat.
Not heartbreak. Not grief. Blackmail. I expected panic. Instead, something colder happened. My work brain activated. The part of me trained to document problems before they spread. I screenshotted every message immediately. Timestamps included. Then I typed one sentence. "Go ahead." Sent. After that, I opened the Notes app on my phone and started documenting everything like an incident report. Date. Time. Threats.
Responses.
Exact wording. Lucas emerged from the bedroom 5 minutes later, holding his phone like he expected to see fear on my face. "You're really doing this?" he asked. I looked at him steadily. "You're really trying to extort me?" His eyes narrowed. "It's not extortion. It's consequences." "Extortion," I repeated calmly. "And now, it's documented." Something dangerous flashed across his face, then disappeared behind a smile. "You think you're smarter than me." "I think you're crossing a line you can't uncross." He stepped closer. $6,000 and I disappear. That's a bargain." "No." His nostrils flared slightly. Then he smiled again, colder this time. "Okay," he whispered. "Enjoy being unemployed." He grabbed his jacket and left like he was still in control, like he was still the one deciding how this ended. The second the apartment door shut behind him, I stopped feeling like a girlfriend and started feeling like someone handling a crisis. The next morning at exactly 8 a.m., I called HR before my workday even began. I explained everything clearly. "I'm dealing with a harassment situation involving an ex-boyfriend. He's threatening to send private messages to my workplace unless I pay him money. I have screenshots, and I'm filing a police report today. I wanted HR informed before he contacts anyone." The HR representative, Dana, stayed calm. No judgment. No dramatic reaction. "Send me everything," she said. "We'll document it. Don't engage with him further." Relief hit so hard, my eyes burned unexpectedly. I forwarded all screenshots immediately. Then I called my manager, Eric.
Short. Professional. Controlled.
"If you receive any emails about me today, they're retaliation from an ex. HR already has the documentation."
Eric paused.
"Are you okay?" "I'm handling it." And I was. At lunch, I walked into the police precinct carrying my phone like evidence. Because it was evidence. The officer took it seriously immediately. He reviewed the texts, documented the threats, assigned a report number, and told me, "Do not pay him. Save every interaction. Do not meet him alone." That night, I changed my apartment locks. $185. Receipt saved. Then I rented a storage unit 10 minutes away.
Climate controlled.
5x10 unit. Gate code emailed instantly. I rented a cargo van the following morning and packed Lucas's belongings in complete silence. Not rage.
Silence.
His clothes went into suitcases, shoes into bins, toiletries into labeled totes. Decorative trays, cologne bottles, expensive coffee grinder, framed prints he hung without asking me first. Every box photographed before sealing. Proof mattered now. Everything mattered now. Before leaving the apartment, I placed one note on the kitchen island. You threatened to extort me. Do not contact my workplace or family again. Your belongings are in storage. Pickup must be scheduled through the office. Then I blocked his number. Not because I hated him. Because I finally understood that access was power. And Lucas never loved anything more than access. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without trying to predict someone else's mood before falling asleep. 4 days later, Lucas came back. And he didn't come alone. 4 days after the breakup, my doorbell camera notification lit up while I was reviewing spreadsheets at work. I already knew it was Lucas before I even opened the app. Some instincts develop too late to save the relationship, but just early enough to save you. Lucas stood on my front porch, wearing the navy jacket I bought him for his birthday last winter. Beside him were 2 women I recognized immediately, Vanessa and Claire, both carrying iced coffees, and expressions that suggested they thought they were arriving to mediate a misunderstanding, instead of witnessing the consequences of blackmail. Lucas tried his old key first. When it didn't work, he frowned slightly and tried again, harder. Then he looked directly into the camera. "Margaret," he mouthed slowly, "open the door." My phone buzzed almost immediately from an unknown number. "Please just talk to him." Another message followed seconds later. "You're taking this way too far." I stared at the text for a long moment. That was the strange thing about manipulation. Even after someone threatened you, even after they demanded money and tried to weaponize your livelihood, people still expected you to preserve their comfort. I replied once. "He attempted to extort me. Police report filed. Do not contact me again." Then I blocked both numbers. Simple. Clean. Lucas remained outside another 10 minutes, pacing across the porch dramatically, while his friends hovered nearby, pretending concern. At one point, he threw his hands into the air like he was the wounded one. Eventually, they left. But the performance didn't stop there. It spread. A mutual acquaintance messaged me on Instagram asking if I had really thrown Lucas out with nowhere to go. My cousin texted, "Hey, is everything okay? Lucas seems devastated." Then my mother called. That one hurt. Not because I doubted myself, because I could hear uncertainty in her voice. "Lucas says he's scared of you," she said carefully. I closed my eyes. For 2 years, Lucas cultivated softness around other people so carefully that even now, after blackmailing me, some part of the world still wanted to believe he was harmless. Without arguing, I sent my mother the screenshot. "Send me $6,000, or I'll email your boss everything." 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then reappeared again. Finally, she called back, quietly. "Oh, Margaret." There was genuine shock in her voice now. "I'm blocking him." Relief washed through me so suddenly, I nearly cried at my desk. That evening, Dana from HR emailed me. "We received an email from your ex-boyfriend containing screenshots. As discussed, we documented and deleted it. No action necessary." I leaned back slowly in my chair, reading the message twice. So Lucas had already tried. And failed. Because the screenshots weren't devastating secrets. They were ordinary frustrations. Workplace venting, sarcastic jokes, human conversations stripped of context and shoved toward people who had already been warned. Lucas tried to burn my life down with damp matches. That realization changed something emotionally. Until then, some frightened part of me still believed he might actually destroy everything. Now I understood something worse for him. He was losing. And desperate people become reckless. That same night, another text arrived from yet another number. "Lucas, you think you won? Lucas, pay me and this stops. Lucas, I can still ruin you." I didn't respond. I forwarded every message to the officer handling the report and copied HR exactly the way they instructed me to. 2 days later, Lucas sent a payment request through an app. $6,000. Note attached. Fix this.
Declined.
Screenshot. Forwarded. Then the requests changed. $3,000. Final offer.
Declined.
$500. Last chance.
Declined.
Watching the amounts shrink almost would have been funny if it wasn't so disturbing. Because extortion has its own emotional rhythm. At first, the manipulator acts powerful. Then, negotiation begins. Then panic leaks through the cracks. The storage facility manager called me on day 5. Your ex-boyfriend came by asking for access to the unit, he explained carefully. He claimed you stole his property. My grip tightened slightly around my phone. Did he get inside? No, the manager said immediately. He didn't have identification or authorization. He mostly wanted an argument. Another unexpected ally. Another adult refusing to participate in Lucas's chaos. By the end of the first week, my apartment felt strangely peaceful. The silence no longer felt lonely. It felt safe. No emotional landmines hidden inside ordinary conversations. No analyzing someone's tone before answering. No quiet punishments disguised as disappointment. I started noticing how tense my body had been for months. Maybe years. Then came the workplace incident. 2.5 weeks after the breakup, my receptionist messaged me during lunch. There's a man in the lobby asking for you. Says it's urgent. Every muscle in my body went cold. I already knew. Instead of going downstairs alone, I walked over to my coworker Jordan's desk. Can you come with me for a second? He looked at my face once and stood immediately. Witnesses mattered now. When the elevator doors opened into the lobby, Lucas was sitting calmly in one of the waiting chairs, like he belonged there. Perfect hair. Pressed shirt. Relaxed posture. He looked less like a man facing harassment allegations and more like someone rehearsing for a sympathy interview. When he saw me, he smiled warmly. That smile used to work on me. Owen. He stopped himself, then laughed softly. Sorry, Margaret. Can we talk? The slip caught me off guard for half a second. I realized then he'd probably recycled emotional tactics from previous relationships too. Nothing about him was original. Even his manipulation felt rehearsed. No, I said evenly. You need to leave. Lucas stood slowly. Please don't do this here. You already did this here. His eyes flicked toward Jordan standing beside me. Then Lucas lowered his voice into that intimate, wounded tone he used whenever he wanted to sound reasonable. I can make this all disappear. I felt anger rise for the first time in days. Not explosive anger.
Disgust.
Because even now, after threats and blackmail and harassment, he still believed everything was negotiable if he pressured me correctly. You made it a police matter, I said. His smile twitched. You don't have to be cruel. I'm not being cruel. I'm being clear. Lucas looked at Jordan again, like he wanted an audience. She's doing this because she's embarrassed. Jordan didn't even blink. Sir, he said calmly, you need to leave the building. Lucas's jaw tightened. For 1 second, the mask slipped completely. I saw rage.
Humiliation.
Panic. Then, security arrived. Lucas left with stiff shoulders and controlled steps, pretending dignity all the way out the doors. 2 hours later, Dana from HR called me personally. We received another email, she said professionally. This one spoofed an HR address. I shut my office door immediately. He impersonated HR? Yes, IT flagged it quickly. We're documenting everything. You're fine. The fact that she sounded irritated instead of alarmed comforted me more than sympathy would have. Lucas wanted fear. Professional documentation kept defeating him. That afternoon, I hired an attorney. Her name was Paige Holloway. The consultation cost $650, and within 15 minutes of reviewing the evidence, she leaned back in her chair and sighed. This is textbook extortion and harassment. Hearing someone else say it aloud mattered more than I expected. Because manipulative people train you to second-guess your own reality. Paige didn't second-guess anything. She organized timelines, reviewed screenshots, documented police reports, and sent a cease and desist letter by certified mail the next morning. No workplace visits. No third-party harassment. No impersonation. No direct contact. Lucas signed for the letter 2 days later. Then immediately texted me from another number. You think a letter scares me? I'm not going anywhere. Pay me, and this stops. I stared at the screen, feeling almost detached now. Because by then, the pattern was obvious. Lucas needed responses like oxygen. Silence suffocated him. I forwarded the message to Paige. That same afternoon, she began filing for a protection order. The paperwork felt surreal. Timelines. Evidence folders. Screenshots. Storage receipts. Lobby incident reports. HR documentation. It felt less like describing a breakup and more like building a case study about coercion. Meanwhile, life continued moving around the disaster. I still woke up early for work. Still grocery shopped. Still paid bills. Still folded laundry. Trauma was strange that way. The world kept asking you to participate in ordinary life, while your nervous system quietly burned. A few weeks later, I went on a date. His name was Daniel. Friend of a friend. Quiet eyes, calm voice, no performance. We met for coffee downtown on a rainy Thursday evening, and halfway through the conversation, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't monitoring his reactions. I wasn't carefully choosing words to avoid emotional consequences later. When I briefly explained I was dealing with harassment from an ex-boyfriend, Daniel didn't lean forward eagerly asking for gossip. He just said softly, "That sounds exhausting. I'm sorry." Normal kindness felt almost suspicious after Lucas. And somehow, Lucas found out about the date anyway. Of course he did. Another new number appeared that night. Must be nice replacing me already. I looked at the message for a long moment before locking my phone. Because the truth was, I wasn't replacing him. I was remembering who I had been before I met him. And I think, deep down, Lucas understood that was the one thing he could never control again. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, almost exactly 2 months after Lucas sent the first blackmail message. By then, my entire life felt divided into before and after. Before the kitchen counter. Before the glowing iPad. Before I realized the man I loved viewed vulnerability as leverage. I arrived at the courthouse, carrying a folder so thick it barely fit inside my bag. Not drama. Evidence. Printed screenshots of extortion texts. Payment requests. HR documentation. Police report numbers. Spoofed email records. Lobby incident notes. Storage receipts. Photos of every packed box. Paperwork had become its own form of emotional armor. Paige met me outside the courtroom, holding coffee and wearing the calm expression of someone who had handled people like Lucas many times before. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded automatically. But the truth was more complicated. I wasn't nervous about seeing Lucas again. I was nervous about how convincing he could be. That was the frightening thing about people like him. They depended on appearing reasonable while quietly destabilizing everyone around them. When Lucas arrived 10 minutes later, he looked exactly how I expected. Conservative blazer. Neutral colors. Soft expression, carefully arranged into wounded dignity. If someone had seen him in the hallway without context, they would have assumed he was attending marriage counseling, not defending himself against harassment allegations. He glanced at me once. Not lovingly. Not angrily. Strategically. Like he was still trying to calculate which version of himself might work best on me. It didn't. For the first time since I met him, I looked at Lucas and felt nothing that resembled confusion. Only clarity. The hearing itself moved quickly at first. Lucas's attorney opened with a polished speech about emotional misunderstandings after a painful breakup. He framed Lucas as heartbroken, overwhelmed, desperate for closure regarding his belongings and relationship. The judge listened politely, then looked at me. "Ms. Knight," he said calmly, "have you provided a method for Mr. Bennett to retrieve his belongings?" "Yes, Your Honor," I answered immediately. His belongings were placed in a storage facility with access available through scheduled pickup and identification verification. The judge nodded once. Then he picked up one of the printed screenshots. I watched his eyes move slowly across the page. The room felt painfully quiet. Finally, he looked toward Lucas. "Did you send this message?" Lucas straightened slightly. "Which message?" The judge read directly from the paper. "Send me $6,000 or I'll email your boss everything." Even hearing it aloud in court sounded uglier somehow. Lucas attempted a faint smile. "I was emotional at the time." "That wasn't my question," the judge replied flatly. The smile disappeared. "Yes," Lucas admitted quietly, "but I didn't mean it as a threat." The judge looked unimpressed. "It reads precisely like a threat." Silence filled the room for several seconds. Lucas's attorney stepped in quickly. "Your Honor, emotions were high on both sides." The judge interrupted him without raising his voice. "Blackmail is not a mutual misunderstanding." I felt my chest loosen slightly, for the first time in weeks. Not because Lucas was losing, because someone else finally saw the situation clearly without me having to explain emotional manipulation from the beginning. Paige presented the timeline next.
Methodical. Precise.
The original threats. The repeated payment requests. The workplace visit. The spoofed HR email. The continued contact through multiple phone numbers after requests to stop. The storage documentation. Everything organized cleanly enough that even Lucas seemed unsettled watching it unfold chronologically. Because isolated incidents can sound emotional. Patterns sound intentional. The judge eventually turned toward Lucas again. "Why impersonate HR?" Lucas looked toward his attorney before answering. "I wasn't impersonating anyone. It was misunderstood." Dana's documentation from HR said otherwise. So did the flagged email records. So did the screenshots. Lucas began speaking faster after that. His composure started cracking around the edges. "I just wanted her to talk to me." "There are lawful ways to communicate after a breakup," the judge replied calmly. Then came the final ruling. 1-year protection order granted. No direct or indirect contact. No workplace visits. No approaching within 300 feet of my apartment or office. Any future property exchange through authorized third parties only. The words settled over me slowly. Not triumphantly.
Quietly.
I didn't feel victorious. I felt exhausted. Like I'd spent months carrying something heavy without realizing how badly it hurt until someone finally removed it from my arms. Lucas looked stunned. Not devastated.
Confused.
As if some part of him genuinely believed consequences only happened to other people. When we exited the courtroom, he tried looking at me again, maybe hoping for softness.
Regret.
One last emotional opening. I walked past him without stopping. Outside the courthouse, Paige asked if I wanted to celebrate somewhere. I surprised both of us by saying no. I didn't want champagne. I wanted peace. A week later, Lucas's older sister arrived at the storage facility with written authorization and identification. The manager handled everything professionally. Boxes signed out. Inventory confirmed. No confrontation. No emotional scene. No final dramatic speech. Just paperwork. And somehow, that felt fitting. Because after all the manipulation and chaos, the relationship ended not with passion, but administration. After that, my life became boring again. Beautifully boring. My apartment stayed quiet. I cooked dinner without wondering if a harmless comment would somehow become an argument later. I slept through entire nights. At work, Eric thanked me privately for handling the situation proactively instead of hiding it until it exploded. Dana from HR told me my early transparency prevented far bigger disruption. IT upgraded security filters connected to my accounts. And a month later, I received a promotion. Not because of sympathy. Because while my personal life was collapsing, I still showed up and performed consistently. "You're steady," Eric told me during the meeting. I remember thinking that might be the nicest compliment anyone had ever given me. Daniel and I kept seeing each other slowly after that. No pressure. No emotional games. No hidden tests disguised as vulnerability. One night, months later, we were cooking dinner together when he accidentally dropped an entire bowl of chopped vegetables across the kitchen floor. For half a second, my body tensed automatically, waiting, expecting irritation, passive aggression, blame. Instead, Daniel just stared at the mess and laughed at himself. "Okay," he sighed dramatically, grabbing paper towels. That looked cooler in my head. Something inside me softened painfully in that moment. Because healthy love doesn't make your nervous system brace for impact. Lucas used to say relationships required sacrifice. What he really meant was obedience. Real love doesn't hold your peace hostage. It doesn't threaten your career to regain control. It doesn't demand money in exchange for basic safety. And it certainly doesn't recruit fear as proof of devotion. Looking back now, I think the relationship truly ended long before the blackmail text. That message simply exposed what had already been living underneath everything else.
Control.
The moment Lucas tried weaponizing my job, my family, and my stability, the relationship stopped being love and became negotiation through fear. And for the first time in years, I stopped negotiating.